The rain had started around 6 o'clock that evening, the kind of persistent autumn drizzle that turned Brooklyn streets into mirrors of neon and headlights. By 8:30, it had escalated into a proper downpour, drumming against the windows of Rosie's diner, with the relentless rhythm of 1,000 tiny fists demanding entry. Maya Santos wiped down the counter for what felt like the 100th time that shift, her lower back aching with that particular burn that came from standing for 10 hours straight. The white sneakers she'd bought on sale 3 months ago had worn through at the heels, and she could feel every cold spot on the checkered linoleum floor through the thin soles. Her dark hair, pulled back in a practical ponytail, had started to escape its elastic band hours ago, and a few strands stuck to her forehead with a mixture of perspiration and the steam that rose from the industrial coffee maker behind her. "Table 7 needs a refill, hun," called out Rosie Martinez from the kitchen window. Her weathered face creased with concern as she studied Maya. "You okay? You look dead on your feet." Maya managed a tired smile, grabbing the coffee pot with practiced efficiency. "I'm fine, Rosie. Just 3 more hours until close." "3 more hours until your shift ends," Rosie corrected, her thick Brooklyn accent softening with maternal worry. "Then you got that exam tomorrow morning, don't you? Pharmacology. Pathophysiology," Maya corrected, pouring coffee for the elderly couple at table 7, who came in every Thursday like clockwork. Mr. and Mrs. Kowalski, married 52 years, still holding hands across the table while they shared a slice of apple pie. But who's counting? The diner was about half full, which was typical for a rainy Thursday evening. The after-work rush had faded, leaving behind the regulars and a few tourists who ducked in to escape the weather. The air smelled of coffee, grilled onions, and the faint sweetness of the pies Rosie baked fresh every morning. The jukebox in the corner played an old Sinatra song, barely audible over the rain and the low murmur of conversation. Maya had been working at Rosie's diner for 3 years, ever since she'd started nursing school at Brooklyn College. The double shifts were crushing, especially during exam season, but the tips were decent and Rosie was understanding about schedule changes. More than that, this place felt like home, in a way her cramped studio apartment never quite did. Her grandmother had worked 2 jobs to raise her after her mother died when Maya was 8. Breast cancer. Aggressive and merciless. Her father had never been in the picture, just a name on a birth certificate and a vague memory of cologne and empty promises. Abuela had passed away 2 years ago, leaving Maya with a fierce work ethic, a strong moral compass, and enough student loan debt to make her eyes water when she thought about it too long. So she didn't think about it. She just worked. "Order up," Rosie called, and Maya moved mechanically through her routine. Deliver the food, smile at the customers, refill the waters, clear the empty plates. The muscles remembered even when the brain was too tired to fully engage. She was carrying a tray of dirty dishes back to the kitchen when the bell above the door chimed. The conversation in the diner didn't stop exactly, but it changed. The volume dropped by several decibels, and the quality of the silence that followed had weight to it, like the air pressure shifting before a storm. Maya set down the tray and turned toward the entrance. 3 men stood in the doorway, rain dripping from their expensive coats onto Rosie's carefully maintained floor. But it wasn't the men who flanked the door that drew every eye in the room. It was the man who stood between them. Vincent Caruso was not physically imposing in the obvious way. He stood perhaps 6 feet tall with a lean build that spoke of discipline rather than raw power. His dark hair, silvered at the temples, was swept back from a face that would have been handsome if not for the hardness in his eyes. A particular kind of cold that came from seeing too much and feeling too little about it. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Maya made in 3 months, custom tailored to perfection, with a black shirt open at the collar. No tie. A man who understood power didn't need to advertise it, but it was his eyes that truly captured attention. Dark, almost black, and utterly unreadable. They swept across the diner with the casual authority of someone who owned every space they entered, not through legal deed but through sheer force of will. Maya had never seen Vincent Caruso in person before, but she knew who he was. Everyone in Brooklyn knew who he was. You didn't live in this borough without hearing the stories, the whispers, the careful way people avoided saying his name too loudly. He was old-school organized crime in a neighborhood that was rapidly gentrifying, a remnant of a darker era that refused to fade into history. The 2 men with him were clearly security, broad-shouldered, alert, with the kind of stillness that suggested coiled violence held barely in check. They took positions on either side of the door without being told, their eyes scanning the room with professional efficiency. Rosie emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron, her face carefully neutral. Maya could see the tension in her boss's shoulders, the way her fingers twisted the fabric nervously. "Mr. Caruso," Rosie said, her voice steady despite the fear Maya could read in her eyes. "Welcome to my diner. Please sit anywhere you like." Vincent inclined his head slightly, a gesture that might have been acknowledgement or dismissal. His eyes continued their survey of the room, and Maya felt the moment his gaze landed on her, a physical sensation, like being pinned under a spotlight. She didn't look away. Years of dealing with difficult customers, handsy drunks, and entitled jerks had taught her that showing fear only made things worse. She met his eyes for exactly 2 seconds, long enough to not be disrespectful, short enough to not be challenging, then returned her attention to clearing table 4. Her hands, she was proud to note, didn't shake. Vincent moved toward the back corner booth, the best seat in the house, the one that offered a clear view of both the entrance and the kitchen. His men remained by the door. As he passed tables, people suddenly became very interested in their food, their conversations dying mid-sentence. Mr. Kowalski's coffee cup rattled slightly against its saucer. Maya grabbed a menu and a glass of water, approaching the booth with the same professional courtesy she showed every customer. She was acutely aware of every eye in the diner following her movement. "Good evening," she said, setting down the water and menu. "Can I start you off with something to drink?" Vincent looked up at her, and this close she could see the faint lines around his eyes, the small scar that cut through his left eyebrow. He was probably in his early 40s, but there was something ageless about him, as if he'd been born already knowing things most people never learned. "Coffee," he said. His voice was surprisingly soft, almost gentle, with a trace of an Italian accent that suggested immigrant parents or grandparents. "Black." "I'll have that right out for you," Maya said, turning to leave. "Wait." The single word stopped her mid-step. She turned back, raising her eyebrows in polite inquiry. Vincent's eyes studied her with uncomfortable intensity, and she had the unsettling feeling of being catalogued, assessed, and filed away for future reference. "What's your name?" he asked. "Maya, sir." "Maya," he repeated as if testing the weight of it. "How long have you worked here, Maya?" 3 years. "Nursing school?" The question caught her off guard. She blinked. "Yes. How did you—" "The textbook in your bag." He gestured to her worn backpack hanging on a hook near the register. "Principles of Pathophysiology, 3rd edition. You've been studying between customers." Maya felt a chill that had nothing to do with the rain. He'd been watching her before he came in, or he had people who watched. Either option was deeply unsettling. "I'll get your coffee," she said, keeping her voice level. This time he let her go. The next 20 minutes passed in a strange, suspended reality. Vincent sat in his booth drinking coffee and occasionally checking his phone. He didn't order food. His men didn't move from their positions by the door, and the entire diner remained locked in that peculiar state of hushed anxiety. Maya served her other customers, but she was hyper-aware of Vincent's presence, the way a rabbit is aware of a hawk circling overhead. She noticed things she wouldn't have otherwise, the way no one asked for their check while he was there, prolonging their stays as if leaving might draw his attention. The way Rosie kept finding reasons to stay in the kitchen rather than work the floor. The way the cook, Big Luis, who claimed to fear nothing, kept his head down and his movements quiet. At table 9, a young couple who'd been laughing over shared nachos had fallen silent, the woman's hand clutching her boyfriend's with white knuckles. At the counter, a truck driver who usually chatted with Maya about his route to Philadelphia stared into his coffee as if it held the secrets of the universe. The rain continued its assault on the windows, and the Sinatra on the jukebox had given way to Ella Fitzgerald, singing about the very thought of you. Maya was refilling water glasses when the bell above the door chimed again. A young woman entered, struggling with both the door and a stroller, rain-soaked and clearly exhausted. She looked barely out of her teens, with stringy blonde hair plastered to her face, and clothes that had seen better days. The baby in the stroller was bundled in blankets, mercifully asleep despite the commotion. Maya immediately moved to help, holding the door as the woman wrestled the stroller inside. "Thank you," the girl breathed, wiping rain from her face with a trembling hand. "God, it's really coming down out there." "Come on, let's get you to a table," Maya said, guiding her toward a booth near the window. She noticed the woman's shoes were worn through at the toes, that her jacket was too thin for the weather, that the diaper bag hanging from the stroller handles was nearly empty. The girl, Sarah, she introduced herself, ordered just hot water with lemon and asked if they had any crackers. Just crackers? Maya asked gently. Sarah's eyes dropped. I'm not very hungry, just something light. Maya recognized the lie immediately. She'd told it herself often enough when Abuela was alive and money was tight. Not hungry really meant can't afford it. Tell you what, Maya said, making a decision. The cook made too much soup tonight. Minestrone. It's just going to go to waste. Why don't you help us out and have a bowl? On the house. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. I couldn't. You'd be doing us a favor, Maya insisted. And maybe some bread? We've got to get rid of it before it goes stale. Thank you, Sarah whispered. You have no idea how much. The baby stirred in the stroller, making a small, unhappy sound. Maya had just brought Sarah her soup when Vincent stood up. The movement was fluid, unhurried, but every person in the diner noticed it. Conversations that had cautiously resumed fell silent again. Maya, setting down the breadbasket, felt her stomach tighten with instinctive dread. Vincent crossed the diner with measured steps, his expensive shoes silent on the linoleum. He stopped directly in front of Maya, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and subtle, cedar and bergamot. Maya, he said, and the way he said her name sent ice down her spine. She straightened, forcing herself to meet his eyes. Yes, sir? Come with me. 3 words, said quietly, almost conversationally, but the diner had gone so silent that even the clatter from the kitchen seemed to have stopped. Everyone heard. Everyone understood what those 3 words meant. When Vincent Caruso told you to come with him, you went. There were no second chances, no polite refusals. You went, and you hoped you came back. Maya's mouth went dry. Her heart hammered against her ribs so hard she was certain everyone could hear it. Behind the counter, Rosie had gone pale, one hand pressed to her mouth. Maya started, her voice catching. I'm working, Mr. Caruso. My shift doesn't end until... Now, he said, and though his voice remained soft, something in it made the temperature in the room drop 10 degrees. Maya's mind raced. She was 26 years old. She'd worked herself to exhaustion for years to build something resembling a future. She was 3 months from graduating nursing school. She had an exam tomorrow that she'd studied 2 weeks for. She had bills to pay, dreams to chase, a life that was hard but hers. And none of it mattered. Not when Vincent Caruso told you to come with him. She could see it in every face in the diner. The resignation, the pity, the relief that it was her and not them. She saw Rosie's tears, Mr. Kowalski's bowed head, the truck driver's clenched jaw. Maya opened her mouth to agree, to accept the inevitable, when the baby started crying. It wasn't a whimper or a fuss. It was a full-throated wail of distress, the kind of cry that signaled something wrong. Sarah jumped up from her booth, abandoning her soup to lift the baby from the stroller. Shh, baby, shh, she murmured, bouncing him gently. It's okay, Mama's here. But the baby wasn't having it. His cries intensified, his small face scrunching up and turning an alarming shade of red. Sarah looked panicked, checking his diaper, offering a pacifier, trying everything at once with the desperation of a young mother at the end of her rope. Maya's nursing training kicked in before conscious thought could stop it. She recognized that cry, not hunger, not a dirty diaper. Pain, distress. The baby's face was flushed, his breathing rapid. Vincent was still standing in front of her, waiting. The entire diner was frozen, watching this tableau unfold. Maya looked at him. Then she looked at Sarah struggling with the screaming infant, tears streaming down the young mother's face, and she made a choice that would change everything. I'm sorry, sir, Maya said, her voice stronger than she felt, but I need to help that baby first. The silence that followed was absolute. Someone's fork clattered against a plate, the sound explosively loud. Rosie made a small, choked sound of horror. Vincent's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his dark eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or anger. Maya couldn't tell which, and that uncertainty terrified her more than anything. His 2 men by the door straightened, hands moving incrementally toward their jackets, toward whatever weapons they carried concealed there. Maya forced herself to keep breathing. This was it. This was how her story ended. Not in a hospital saving lives like she'd dreamed, but in a diner in Brooklyn, because she couldn't stand by while a baby suffered. But if she had to go out, at least it would be for something that mattered. Vincent stared at her for a long moment, his face unreadable. The baby's cries filled the space between them, urgent and impossible to ignore. Then slowly, Vincent raised one hand. His men stopped moving. The tension in the room remained, but the immediate threat receded slightly. "You have 5 minutes," Vincent said quietly, his eyes never leaving Maya's face. He walked back to his booth and sat down, pulling out his phone as if nothing had happened. Maya didn't waste time questioning the reprieve. She rushed to Sarah's table, her hands already reaching for the baby. "May I?" she asked. Sarah, pale and shaking, nodded desperately. "Please, I don't know what's wrong. He was fine an hour ago and now he won't stop crying." Maya took the baby gently, supporting his head with practiced care. She'd done a rotation in pediatrics last semester, had held hundreds of babies, but each one still felt like a miracle and a responsibility in equal measure. The baby, maybe 6 months old, was burning up. Even through his blanket, Maya could feel the heat radiating from his small body. "Does he have a thermometer?" Maya asked, already knowing the answer. Sarah shook her head, looking ashamed. "I lost it when I had to leave my apartment." Maya didn't ask why Sarah had to leave her apartment. She could guess: rent she couldn't pay, an eviction, the cascade of failures that poverty brought, or maybe something worse. The barely healed bruise on Sarah's cheek suggested there might be more to the story. "He has a fever," Maya said, keeping her voice calm and professional even as her mind raced. "A high one." "When did it start?" "This afternoon. I thought it was just teething, so I gave him some infant pain reliever, but it hasn't helped." Maya checked the baby's ears by pulling gently on the lobes. He screamed louder, twisting away. Ear infection, probably. Maybe something worse. She checked his breathing, his color, his responsiveness. "He needs to see a doctor," Maya said. "Tonight. This can't wait." Sarah's face crumpled. I lost my insurance when I lost my job. And the emergency room, they'll ask questions. And if they think I can't take care of him, they'll call. They'll help him," Maya interrupted firmly. "That's what matters right now." She was acutely aware of time ticking by. How long had it been? 3 minutes? 4? Vincent Caruso didn't seem like a man who gave extensions. The baby's cries had subsided into whimpers, his small body going limp with exhaustion against Maya's shoulder. That worried her more than the screaming had. Babies this young shouldn't give up so easily. "Listen to me," Maya said, meeting Sarah's frightened eyes. "There's a clinic on 4th Street about 6 blocks from here. Dr. Patel runs it. They work on a sliding scale and they don't report to. I'll take care of it." Maya turned to find Vincent standing beside their table. She'd been so focused on the baby that she hadn't heard him approach. Up close, with the baby between them, he looked different somehow. His eyes were fixed on the infant in Maya's arms, and something in his expression had shifted. A crack in the armor, barely visible but unmistakable. He pulled a money clip from his pocket, extracted several bills without counting them, and placed them on the table. Maya caught a glimpse of the denominations. Hundreds, at least 5 of them. "Take the child to Brooklyn Medical Center," Vincent said, his voice still quiet, but different now. Less command, more something else. "Tell them Vincent Caruso sent you. They'll ask no questions, they'll provide the best care." Sarah stared at the money as if it might disappear. "I can't." "Why would you?" "Take it," Vincent said, and now there was an edge to his voice. Not anger, impatience maybe, or discomfort with gratitude. Maya carefully transferred the baby back to Sarah, showing her how to support his head, whispering instructions about keeping him cool and hydrated on the way to the hospital. "Thank you," Sarah sobbed, clutching both her baby and the money. Thank you, God bless you both." Vincent had already turned away, walking back toward his booth, but he paused, looking back at Maya. "Your 5 minutes are up," he said. "My car's outside." Maya helped Sarah gather her things, pack the diaper bag, bundle the baby against the rain. She called a taxi on the diner's phone. Sarah didn't have a cell phone, and waited with her until the yellow cab pulled up outside. The entire time she was aware of Vincent watching from his booth, patient as a cat at a mouse hole. When Sarah was safely in the taxi, clutching her baby and the money that might save his life, Maya had no more excuses. She walked back inside, water dripping from her hair where she'd stepped out to help with the stroller. The diner was still silent, still waiting. Rosie caught her arm as she passed. "Maya, you don't have to—" "It's okay," Maya said, and she was surprised to find she meant it. Whatever happened next, she'd done the right thing. She'd saved a baby. That had to count for something, even if it was the last good thing she ever did. She grabbed her backpack from its hook, shrugging into her thin jacket. Her pathophysiology textbook pressed against her back, a reminder of the exam she might never take. Vincent stood, placing several more bills on his table to cover coffee he'd barely touched. Probably a $100 tip for a $3 cup of coffee. The kind of money that kept people quiet, compliant. Maya joined him by the door. His men flanked them immediately, one opening the door, the other scanning the street outside. The rain had intensified into a proper storm, wind driving the water sideways. A black Mercedes waited at the curb, engine running, wipers moving rhythmically. Vincent's hand appeared in her peripheral vision, not touching, but gesturing toward the car. After you. Maya stepped out into the rain, and it felt like stepping off a cliff into darkness, trusting that there might be something other than rocks at the bottom. The car door opened. The interior was warm, leather seats soft and expensive, the smell of that same cedar bergamot cologne. She slid inside. Vincent followed, settling into the seat beside her with economic grace. One of his men took the driver's seat, the other the passenger side. The doors closed with the solid thunk of German engineering, and then they were moving, pulling away from the diner, from Rosie's worried face in the window, from the only safety Maya had known. "Where are we going?" she asked, proud that her voice didn't shake. Vincent was silent for a long moment, watching the rain-slicked streets slide past. Brooklyn at night, all neon reflections and shadows, beautiful and dangerous in equal measure. "I owe you an explanation," he finally said. "You don't owe me anything, Mr. Caruso." "Vincent," he corrected. "And yes, I do." He turned to look at her, and in the intermittent light of passing street lamps, his face was unreadable. "You could have left with me immediately. Most people would have. Instead, you stayed for a stranger's child. Why?" Maya thought about lying, giving some noble answer about her nursing training or her sense of duty, but something in his eyes suggested he'd know the lie and respect the truth more. "My mother died when I was 8, she said. "Abuela raised me alone, worked herself to exhaustion to give me a chance. I know what it's like to be desperate, to need help and have everyone look away." She met his eyes directly. "I couldn't be the person who looks away." Vincent nodded slowly as if she'd confirmed something he suspected. "Your grandmother. She passed recently? 2 years ago. I'm sorry." The unexpected sympathy was somehow more unsettling than threats would have been. Maya didn't know what to do with a Vincent Caruso who offered condolences. "The baby will be fine," Vincent said, returning his gaze to the window. "Brooklyn Medical is the best pediatric care in the city. The mother will be fine too. I'll make sure of it." "Why?" Maya asked. "Why help them?" "Because you asked me to," he said simply. "By staying. By choosing them over your own safety." The car turned down a street Maya didn't recognize, heading deeper into a part of Brooklyn she didn't know. Away from the familiar, away from witnesses. "I needed someone," Vincent said, still not looking at her, "to check on someone who matters to me. Someone who refuses my help because she disapproves of how I make my living. But she's sick and stubborn, and I thought a nursing student might succeed where my money and influence have failed." Maya's heart was still racing, but fear was slowly being replaced by confusion. "That's all? You need me to check on someone who's sick?" "That's all," Vincent confirmed. "You could have just asked," Maya pointed out, "at the diner, instead of the whole come with me routine." For the first time, the corner of Vincent's mouth lifted in what might have been the ghost of a smile. "Would you have agreed if I'd simply walked up and politely requested your assistance?" Maya considered this honestly. "Probably not." "Exactly. People hear my name and refuse before I finish speaking. They're too afraid of what helping me might mean, what strings might be attached." He finally looked at her again. "But you weren't afraid. Not enough to abandon a child in need." "I was terrified," Maya admitted. "Yes," Vincent agreed. "But you stayed anyway. That's courage, Maya. Real courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision to act despite it." The car slowed, pulling to a stop in front of an apartment building in Chinatown. Old but well-maintained, with a red door and window boxes that probably held flowers in the spring. "Mrs. Chen lives on the 3rd floor," Vincent said. "She raised me after my parents died. She's the closest thing to family I have left, and she's dying because she won't let me help her." He opened his door and the rain rushed in. "Coming?" Maya looked at this man, this dangerous, notorious man, and saw for just a moment the grieving boy underneath, the one who'd lost parents, the one who'd been raised by kindness and couldn't quite forget it, even after everything that came after. She thought about her exam tomorrow, about her shift at the diner, about the sensible life she'd carefully constructed. Then she thought about Abuela, Who'd taught her that compassion wasn't convenience? It was showing up when it was hard. Maya grabbed her backpack and stepped out into the rain. The building's entrance smelled of ginger, soy sauce, and the faint mustiness that comes with age. The hallway was narrow but clean, with faded floral wallpaper that had probably been cheerful once, decades ago. A flickering, fluorescent light buzzed overhead, casting everything in harsh, intermittent brightness. Vincent moved through the space with familiarity, bypassing the ancient elevator and heading straight for the stairs. His men stayed behind, one positioning himself by the front entrance, the other moving to cover the back alley exit. Professional, efficient, a choreography they'd performed countless times. Maya followed Vincent up the stairs, her wet sneakers squeaking against the worn linoleum. The stairwell was warmer than outside, the building's old radiators clanking and hissing with effort. Through thin walls she could hear the sounds of life, a television playing in Cantonese, a baby crying, someone practicing violin with more enthusiasm than skill. Normal sounds, family sounds. It was strange to think of Vincent Caruso existing in this world of ordinary domesticity. "She doesn't know I'm coming," Vincent said quietly as they reached the second-floor landing. "She told me not to visit anymore. Said my presence brings danger to her neighbors." "Does it?" Maya asked. Vincent paused, his hand on the railing. "Yes," he admitted. "Everything I touch becomes dangerous eventually. It's the nature of what I am." There was no self-pity in his voice, just a flat statement of fact. It reminded Maya of how her anatomy professor described terminal diagnoses. Clinical, detached, as if distance made the truth less brutal. They continued climbing. The third-floor hallway was identical to the others. Same faded wallpaper, same flickering light. Vincent stopped in front of apartment 3C, his hand raised to knock, then hesitating. Maya saw it then. Genuine fear, not of violence or consequences, but of rejection, of being turned away by someone whose opinion actually mattered to him. "She sounds stubborn," Maya offered quietly. "Impossibly," Vincent agreed. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "You remind me of her, actually. That same refusal to bend when you think you're right." Before Maya could respond, Vincent knocked. 3 soft raps, a pattern that seemed deliberate. Silence. Then shuffling footsteps, slow and careful. "Wo shuo le bu yao lai," came a sharp voice from behind the door. The words were Mandarin, but the tone transcended language. Universal annoyance. "I told you not to come back." "It's not who you think, Mrs. Chen," Vincent called back, his voice gentler than Maya had heard it. "I brought someone. A nurse. Please." More silence. Then the sound of multiple locks being undone. 1, 2, 3, 4. The door opened a crack, stopped by a security chain. A woman's face appeared in the gap, ancient and beautiful, with skin like crumpled silk and eyes that burned with fierce intelligence despite their cloudiness. She looked at Vincent with an expression Maya couldn't quite read. Anger, love, disappointment, hope, all tangled together. Then her gaze shifted to Maya, and those sharp eyes assessed her in seconds. "You brought a girl?" Mrs. Chen said, switching to English with barely a trace of accent. "Vincenzo, I told you I don't need—" "She's not for me," Vincent interrupted. "She's for you. Please, Mrs. Chen, 5 minutes, that's all I ask." The old woman's eyes narrowed, flicking between them. Maya could practically see her mind working, weighing options, calculating risks. 5 minutes, Mrs. Chen finally agreed, but only because she looks cold and wet, and I won't have that on my conscience. The chain slid back. The door opened. Mrs. Chen's apartment was small but immaculate. A one-bedroom that couldn't have been more than 500 square feet. Every inch organized with the precision of someone who'd lived through scarcity and learned to waste nothing. The furniture was old but well-maintained. A threadbare sofa covered with a hand-crocheted blanket, a small television on a wooden stand, a kitchen table with 2 chairs. But what dominated the space were the photographs. They covered every available surface. Frames on the walls, the mantel, the bookshelf, the side tables. Decades of life captured in fading color and black and white. Maya glimpsed images of children, family gatherings, a younger Mrs. Chen with a man who must have been her late husband, and Vincent. So many photographs of Vincent, a solemn boy of maybe 7, wearing an oversized suit jacket, a teenager with defiant eyes and too long hair, a young man in his 20s already carrying himself with that particular stillness that suggested controlled danger. Mrs. Chen caught Maya looking. "I was his nanny," she said, moving slowly toward the kitchen. His mother hired me when Vincenzo was 3 years old. I stayed with the family until, she paused, her face tightening, until there was no family left to stay with. Vincent had removed his wet coat and hung it carefully on a hook by the door. In the apartment's warm light, Maya noticed details she'd missed before. The way his expensive suit couldn't quite hide the tension in his shoulders, the faint scar on his jawline, the careful control in every movement. "Mrs. Chen, please sit down," Maya said, her nursing training kicking in. "I'd like to ask you a few questions about how you've been feeling." The old woman waved a dismissive hand. "I'm fine. A little cough, nothing serious. Vincenzo worries too much." "She's been coughing for 3 weeks," Vincent said quietly from his position by the window, where he could see the street below. "Fever at night. No appetite. She's lost weight." "I'm 81 years old," Mrs. Chen snapped. "Of course I've lost weight. Everything shrinks when you get old." But even as she argued, she was lowering herself into one of the kitchen chairs, moving with the careful slowness of someone in pain. Maya recognized the signs immediately. The shallow breathing, the way she braced herself against the table, the faint blue tinge to her lips. Maya pulled out the other chair, sitting across from Mrs. Chen. "May I take your pulse?" Mrs. Chen huffed but extended her wrist. Such a fuss. Maya's fingers found the pulse point, counting the beats while observing the older woman. Rapid heart rate, skin clammy despite the warmth of the apartment, slight tremor in her hands. The cough, Mrs. Chen was trying to suppress, rattled in her chest like broken glass. "How long have you been short of breath?" Maya asked gently. "I'm not—" "Mrs. Chen," Maya interrupted, channeling every stern physician she'd studied under. "I can hear your breathing from here. Please. I'm trying to help." The old woman's resistance crumbled slightly. "Maybe a week, maybe longer. It's worse when I lie down. Have you been coughing up anything?" A pause. "Sometimes. Yellow. A little blood this morning." Vincent's head turned sharply from the window. "Blood? Lo Lao, you didn't tell me." "Because you would panic," Mrs. Chen said firmly. "You would throw money at it, demand I go to the hospital, make everything worse." "Because you need to go to the hospital," Vincent said, and Maya heard genuine fear beneath his controlled tone. "This isn't a cold. This is pneumonia, maybe worse." "I know what it is," Mrs. Chen said quietly. "I had it once before, many years ago. The hospital, the bills, the treatments that made me sicker. I won't do that again, not at my age." Maya understood then what was really happening. This wasn't stubborn ignorance. It was an informed choice. Mrs. Chen knew exactly how sick she was. She'd simply decided that quality mattered more than quantity. "May I listen to your lungs?" Maya asked. Mrs. Chen nodded, and Maya helped her remove her cardigan. Using the basic techniques she'd learned in clinical training, Maya placed her ear against the woman's back, listening as she breathed. The sounds confirmed her fears. Crackles in the lower lobes, diminished breath sounds on the left side. This was advanced pneumonia, possibly with fluid buildup. Without treatment, antibiotics at minimum, possibly hospitalization, Mrs. Chen had maybe 2 weeks before the infection overwhelmed her system. Maya sat back, meeting the old woman's knowing eyes. "Well?" Mrs. Chen asked. "How long do I have, nurse?" "That depends," Maya said honestly, "on whether you're willing to accept treatment." "I won't go to the hospital." "Then we bring the hospital to you," Vincent said, already pulling out his phone. "I'll have a medical team here within the hour. The best doctors, whatever equipment you need." "No," Mrs. Chen said, and the word cracked like a whip. "I told you, Vincenzo. I won't accept help bought with blood money. I won't be another person whose life you purchase with violence." The silence that followed was devastating. Vincent slowly lowered his phone, and Maya saw something break in his expression, a careful wall crumbling, revealing the hurt underneath. "Everything I have is blood money," he said quietly. "You know what I am. You've always known. But this isn't about me, Lao Lao. It's about keeping you alive. Some prices are too high," Mrs. Chen replied, her voice gentle now, almost kind. "Even for life." Maya felt like she was intruding on something private, something sacred. But Mrs. Chen turned to her, those sharp eyes assessing again. "You're wondering why I'm so cruel to him," the old woman said. "This girl he brought to help me." "It's not my place," Maya started. "Let me tell you about Vincenzo," Mrs. Chen interrupted, and despite her labored breathing, her voice carried the authority of someone who'd earned the right to be heard. "So you understand what you've gotten yourself involved with." Vincent moved away from the window, standing with his back against the wall, his face carefully blank, but his hands, Maya noticed, had curled into fists at his sides. I came to work for the Caruso family in 1967, Mrs. Chen began, fresh off the boat from Taiwan, barely speaking English, desperate for any job that would feed my own children. Mrs. Caruso, Vincenzo's mother, Maria, she was kind to me, patient with my English, fair with my wages, and her son, the old woman's expression softened. He was the sweetest boy, so curious, so bright, always asking questions, always trying to help me with chores even though he was barely tall enough to reach the counter. Maya glanced at Vincent, trying to reconcile the sweet, curious boy with the man who'd silently commanded an entire diner with his presence. His father, Antonio, he was already involved in the business, Mrs. Chen continued delicately, but he kept it away from home. Vincenzo went to good schools, had music lessons, played in the park like any normal child. Maria wanted better for him. She dreamed of him becoming a doctor, maybe a lawyer, something legitimate. Mrs. Chen's breathing grew more labored. She paused to cough, and the sound was wet, painful. Maya automatically reached for a glass of water, helping the old woman drink. "Thank you, dear," Mrs. Chen wheezed. "Where was I? Ah, yes, the dreams." Maria's dreams died when Vincenzo was 7. Brain aneurysm. One minute she was making breakfast, the next she was gone. Just gone. Vincent's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Antonio, he fell apart, Mrs. Chen said. Started drinking, started making mistakes. The business suffered. He borrowed money from the wrong people. And then there was Vincenzo's little brother, Marco. Maya's breath caught. Vincent had mentioned a brother, but the past tense had told her everything she needed to know about how that story ended. Marco was 5 years younger than Vincenzo, Mrs. Chen continued, her voice growing softer. Born with a weak heart. The doctors said he needed surgery, expensive surgery, or he wouldn't live to see his 10th birthday. Antonio tried everything. Loans, deals, promises to people who don't forget promises. But the debt grew faster than the money came in. The old woman looked directly at Vincent now, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "Vincenzo was 9 years old when he started stealing," she said. "I caught him once, pockets full of wallets he'd picked from the market. I was so angry, so disappointed. I asked him why, and you know what he said?" Vincent's voice emerged from his position against the wall, flat and emotionless. "I said Marco needed medicine. Dad didn't have money for medicine. He was 9, Mrs. Chen repeated, and now the tears did fall, tracking down her weathered cheeks. 9 years old, and already he'd decided that his childhood was an acceptable price for his brother's life. Maya felt something twist in her chest. She thought of herself at 9, still grieving her mother, but protected by Abuela's fierce love. She'd never had to make choices like that, never had to sacrifice her innocence for survival. "Antonio died when Vincenzo was 10, Mrs. Chen continued. Drank himself to death. Officially it was cirrhosis. Unofficially it was shame. The debts passed to Vincenzo, 10 years old, and suddenly he owed money to men who would hurt a child to collect. Mrs. Chen," Vincent started, but she held up a hand. "Let me finish. Maya needs to understand." She turned back to Maya. "The men who owned Antonio's debts, they offered Vincenzo a deal. Work for them, and they'd forgive the debt. More than that, they'd pay for Marco's surgery." Vincenzo agreed. Of course he agreed. He was 10, and they promised to save his brother. The apartment suddenly felt too small, too warm. Maya could barely breathe, imagining a 10-year-old boy making deals with criminals to save his baby brother. "They lied," Vincent said quietly. "The surgery was scheduled for Marco's 10th birthday. I'd worked for them for 3 years, done terrible things for a child, convinced myself it was worth it because Marco would live, and then..." He stopped, unable to continue. "Marco died the week before his surgery," Mrs. Chen finished. "His heart gave out, just stopped. All of it. The stealing, the violence, the childhood Vincenzo sacrificed. None of it mattered. Marco died anyway. The silence was absolute. I found Vincenzo 3 days after the funeral," Mrs. Chen said. 14 years old, standing on the Brooklyn Bridge at 2 in the morning. He didn't have to tell me what he was thinking. I could see it in his eyes. Maya's throat constricted. "What did you do?" "I told him the same thing I'm telling him now," Mrs. Chen said, looking directly at Vincent. "That the boy I raised, the boy who sacrificed everything for love, that boy deserved to live. That boy was worth saving. But the man he's become, she shook her head. That man frightens me, because he's forgotten that he was ever that boy. Vincent pushed off the wall, moving to the window again, his back to both of them. Maya could see the tension in his shoulders, the rigid control that kept him from falling apart. I haven't forgotten, he said quietly. I remember every day, every choice, every person I've hurt in the name of survival. I remember all of it, Lao Lao. That's the problem. I remember, and I can't undo any of it. No, Mrs. Chen agreed. You can't, but you can choose differently going forward. Can I? Vincent turned back, and Maya saw the naked pain in his face. I've been in this life for 32 years. I've built an empire on fear and violence. Men respect me because they're terrified of me. I have power because I'm willing to do things others won't. How do I walk away from that? Who do I become if I'm not this? You become the man your mother hoped you'd be, Mrs. Chen said simply. Before the world broke you, before you broke yourself. Maya cleared her throat, uncomfortable with the intensity of emotions in the small apartment. Mrs. Chen, regardless of everything else, you still need medical treatment. If you won't go to the hospital and you won't let Vincent bring doctors here, then what? The old woman looked at her with something like approval. Practical girl, I like that. She paused to cough again, the sound worse than before. There's a clinic. Dr. Patel, 2 blocks from here. He treats people like me. No insurance, no questions. I've been meaning to go. But the stairs, I'll take you, Maya said immediately. Tomorrow, Mrs. Chen insisted. It's late. The clinic is closed. Then I'll come back tomorrow, Maya said. Give me your number. I'll call you in the morning. Make sure you're still planning to go. Mrs. Chen smiled, and despite her illness, it transformed her face. You're a good girl. Much too good to be mixed up with this one. She gestured at Vincent. I'm starting to think, Maya said carefully, that things aren't as simple as good and bad. That people can be both depending on the moment. Vincent was watching her now with an expression she couldn't quite read. Mrs. Chen reached out, taking Maya's hand in her thin, trembling one. Be careful with your compassion, dear girl. Vincenzo here. He's been starved of genuine kindness for so long that he might mistake it for something it's not. And you? She squeezed Maya's hand gently. You might mistake your desire to heal for something deeper. Maya felt her face flush. I just met him tonight. I'm not... I know, Mrs. Chen said. I'm just warning you. Wounds like his, they don't heal quickly. Sometimes they don't heal at all. Vincent moved toward the door, pulling on his coat. We should go, it's late, and Maya has an exam tomorrow. He remembered. Somehow, in the middle of everything else, Vincent Caruso had remembered that Maya had an exam in the morning. Maya helped Mrs. Chen back to her chair, made sure she had water within reach, and wrote down her cell phone number on a notepad by the phone. I mean it, Maya said. I'll call you at 9 a.m. If you don't answer, I'm coming back here. Bossy, Mrs. Chen observed, but she was smiling. Good. Vincenzo needs people in his life who aren't afraid to boss him around. At the door, Vincent paused. Lao Lao, please. Think about what I said. The medical team. No blood money, Mrs. Chen interrupted firmly. But, if this girl comes back tomorrow, if she goes to the clinic with me using my own money, my own choices, that I can accept. It was a compromise, and Vincent knew it. Maya saw the relief in his eyes, quickly masked. Thank you, he said quietly, for letting me see you, for not shutting the door in my face. I love you, Vincenzo, Mrs. Chen said, and her voice broke. I've always loved you, even when I hated what you became. But love isn't enough to save someone who won't save themselves. Vincent nodded once, then turned and left the apartment before Maya could see if Mrs. Chen's words had affected him. Maya followed, pausing at the door to look back. I'll see you tomorrow, she promised. Be careful, Mrs. Chen warned. Not just tonight. Always. Men like him, they're beautiful and broken and dangerous all at once. It's a combination that can destroy you if you're not careful. Maya didn't have an answer for that, so she just nodded and closed the door behind her. In the hallway, Vincent was already halfway down the stairs. Maya hurried to catch up, her mind reeling from everything she'd learned. A boy who'd sacrificed his childhood to save a brother he couldn't save. A man who'd built power from pain, respect from fear, an empire from the ruins of his innocence. And an old woman who loved him enough to refuse his help, hoping that rejection might succeed where acceptance had failed. They exited the building into rain that had softened to a steady drizzle. The street was quiet, most people having retreated indoors. Vincent's men materialized from their positions, one holding an umbrella over Vincent's head, the other scanning the surroundings with professional vigilance. The Mercedes was still waiting, but Vincent made no move toward it. "Thank you," he said, looking at Maya in the glow of a streetlight. "For what you did tonight. For her." "I didn't do anything yet," Maya pointed out. "Just promised to take her to a clinic tomorrow." "You gave her something she could accept," Vincent said. "Help that didn't come from me. That's everything." Maya studied his face, seeing things she hadn't before. The exhaustion behind his eyes, the weight of decades carried in the set of his shoulders. He looked older than his 42 years, and younger somehow at the same time. The boy and the monster existing in the same skin. "The baby from the diner," Vincent said abruptly. "Sarah and her child. I meant what I said, they'll be taken care of." "Why?" Maya asked. "And don't say, because I asked you to again. I want the real reason." Vincent was silent for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice was so quiet she almost missed it over the rain. "Because I saw my brother in that baby," he said. "Helpless, suffering, and I saw the person I could have been in you. Someone who helps without calculating the cost. Someone who still believes that kindness matters." "It does matter," Maya said firmly. "Does it?" Vincent asked, and there was genuine curiosity in his voice, as if he'd forgotten the answer and desperately wanted to remember. "In my world, kindness is weakness. Compassion is a liability. The only thing that matters is power and the willingness to use it." "Then your world is wrong," Maya said simply. Vincent laughed, a sound without humor. "Probably, but it's the only world I have." His phone buzzed. He checked it, his expression hardening instantly. "We need to go," he said, his voice sharp now, professional. "Now." One of his men was already opening the car door. The other had his hand inside his jacket ready to draw a weapon. "What's wrong?" Maya asked. "Get in the car," Vincent ordered, and the command in his voice was absolute. Maya obeyed without thinking, sliding into the Mercedes. Vincent followed immediately, the door slamming shut behind him. "Drive," he told the driver. "Take the long route. Vary the speed. Watch for—" The first gunshot shattered the car's rear window. Glass exploded inward, and Maya screamed as Vincent's arm shot across her chest, pushing her down into the footwell with brutal efficiency. "Down! Stay down!" he shouted, his body covering hers as more shots rang out. The driver accelerated hard, tires screeching on wet pavement. The remaining windows shattered in sequence. Passenger side, driver's side, the windshield spider-webbing but holding. Maya's mind couldn't process what was happening. This wasn't real. This was a movie, a nightmare, something that happened to other people in other lives. But the glass cutting her cheek was real. The weight of Vincent's body pinning her down was real. The acrid smell of gunpowder filling the car was real. "Return fire," Vincent ordered his men, and suddenly the car was filled with the deafening sound of gunshots from multiple directions. The Mercedes swerved violently. Maya heard metal crunching, felt the impact as they sideswiped something. The driver was shouting in Italian, cursing or praying, maybe both. "How many?" Vincent demanded. "2 cars," the man in the passenger seat responded. "Black SUVs, no plates. Petrov's men has to be." More gunfire. The rear windshield, already destroyed, took another hit. Maya felt something hot whiz past her ear. A bullet, she realized with numb horror. A bullet had just missed her head by inches. Vincent shifted his weight, reaching for something under his jacket. Maya glimpsed the weapon, sleek, black, professional, before he was twisting in his seat, returning fire through the shattered window. 4 blocks to the safe house, the driver yelled. "We can make it if—" The impact came from the passenger side, metal screaming as an SUV rammed them. The Mercedes fishtailed, the driver fighting for control. They jumped a curb, crashed through a sidewalk newspaper stand, sending papers flying like startled birds. Maya's shoulder slammed into the door. Pain exploded through her arm, bright and terrible. She bit her lip hard enough to taste blood, refusing to scream again. "Maya!" Vincent's voice cut through the chaos. "Are you hit?" "No," she gasped. "Just my shoulder." "We're not stopping," he said, and she heard the decision in his voice. The calculation. Her pain mattered, but her survival mattered more. The driver made a hard right, tires shrieking. They were in an alley now, narrow and dark, barely wide enough for the car. The SUVs couldn't follow, too wide to fit, but motorcycles could. Maya heard them before she saw them. High-pitched engines growing closer. Vincent heard them too. He cursed in Italian. Rapid-fire words she didn't understand but whose meaning was crystal clear. "Hold on!" the driver shouted. They burst out of the alley onto a main street. The Mercedes accelerated, weaving through late-night traffic with terrifying precision. Behind them, two motorcycles emerged from the alley, riders in dark helmets, weapons visible. One of Vincent's men leaned out the window, firing methodically. One motorcycle swerved, crashed into a parked car in a spray of sparks and twisted metal. The second kept coming. "Bridge ahead," the driver called. "If we can reach it." The motorcycle rider fired. The bullet hit the driver. Maya saw it happen in horrible slow motion. The impact. The driver's body jerking forward, the sudden limpness in his hands. The Mercedes swerved wildly, heading straight for a concrete barrier. Vincent lunged forward, grabbing the wheel from behind, steering them away from immediate disaster. But he couldn't reach the pedals, couldn't stop their momentum. "Brace!" he shouted. They hit a row of garbage cans, sending them flying. Clipped a fire hydrant, water erupting like a geyser. Mounted the sidewalk again. And then Vincent did something Maya would remember for the rest of her life. He wrapped himself around her, his body becoming a shield, protecting her from the impacts, the glass, the chaos. The Mercedes finally stopped, wedged against a brick wall in what looked like a loading dock. The engine ticked in the sudden silence, steam rising from the crumpled hood. For a moment nobody moved. Then Vincent was pulling her up, checking her over with quick, efficient movements. "Are you hurt? Can you move?" "Yes," Maya managed, though her whole body felt like one giant bruise. The man in the passenger seat was already out, weapon drawn, scanning for threats. The driver slumped over the wheel, bleeding from a shoulder wound but conscious, cursing steadily in Italian. "Salvatore, you good?" Vincent asked. "Flesh wound, boss." The driver ground out through gritted teeth. "I'll live." "Then let's move," Vincent ordered. "They'll have backup coming. We need to—" He stopped mid-sentence, his eyes going wide. His hand moved to his side, came away red. Blood. A lot of it. "Vincent!" Maya's voice came out high, panicked. He looked down at himself with almost curious detachment. "I didn't even feel it," he said wonderingly. Then his legs buckled. Maya caught him before he fell, her nursing training overriding her shock. "Help me!" she screamed at the other men. "He's been shot!" "Safe house," Vincent gasped. "2 blocks. Can't. Hospital. Questions. You need a hospital," Maya insisted, already applying pressure to the wound. Her hands came away soaked with blood. Too much blood. "No," Vincent said, and even wounded, his voice carried authority. You help me. You're nurse." "I'm a student," Maya said desperately. "I've never—" "No choice," Vincent cut her off. His face was pale, sweating despite the cold. "Trust you. Only you." His eyes rolled back. He went limp in her arms. And Maya, who'd started this night just trying to survive her shift at a diner, now held the life of Brooklyn's most dangerous man in her blood-covered hands. The safe house was nothing like Maya expected. She'd imagined something out of a crime movie. Stark concrete, weapons on walls, maybe surveillance monitors flickering in dark corners. Instead, she found herself in what appeared to be an ordinary apartment above a Chinese restaurant in Sunset Park. The smell of five-spice and frying oil permeated everything, and through the thin floors she could hear the clatter of dishes and muffled Cantonese conversations. Vincent's man, the one who'd been in the passenger seat, who'd introduced himself tersely as Marco, had half-carried, half-dragged his boss up a back staircase while Maya pressed a borrowed jacket against Vincent's wound, trying to slow the bleeding. Salvatore, the driver, followed despite his own injury, one hand clamped to his shoulder, the other gripping his weapon. The apartment door had multiple locks. Marco opened them one-handed with practiced speed, shouldering the door open into a space that was surprisingly domestic. A small living room with a worn couch, a kitchen with dated appliances, a hallway leading to what Maya assumed were bedrooms. Clean, but lived in, with the kind of anonymity that suggested no one actually lived here. It was a place to hide, to wait, to disappear. "Bedroom," Marco grunted, nodding toward the hallway. They laid Vincent on a bed with plain white sheets. He was conscious but fading, his breathing shallow, skin clammy with shock. The bullet had entered high on his left side, just below the ribs. Maya's hands shook as she pulled back his blood-soaked shirt, trying to remember everything she'd learned in her trauma rotation last semester. Entry wound. No exit wound. The bullet was still inside. "I need supplies." Maya said, forcing her voice to stay steady. Clean towels, hot water, rubbing alcohol if you have it, hydrogen peroxide, tweezers, scissors, needle and thread, medical suture if possible, but regular thread if that's all there is, painkillers, antibiotics if you have them. Marco stared at her. You're going to take the bullet out here? Do you have a better idea? Maya snapped, fear making her sharp. He won't go to a hospital, so yes, I'm going to try. Now get me those supplies before he bleeds out. Marco moved fast, disappearing into other rooms. Salvatore limped in, already pulling off his jacket to reveal his own wound, a through and through that had missed anything vital but was bleeding steadily. Sit, Maya ordered him. You're next. The boss first, Salvatore insisted. The boss is stable for the next 5 minutes, you're not. Sit down before you pass out and I have 2 patients. Salvatore sat. Maya worked on autopilot, her hands remembering what her panicked mind struggled to recall. She cleaned Salvatore's wound, packed it with gauze, wrapped it tight. The bullet had passed clean through the meat of his shoulder. Painful but not life-threatening if infection didn't set in. Keep pressure on it, she instructed. And someone needs to watch you for the next few hours. If you start feeling dizzy, feverish, or the pain gets worse, you need a real hospital. What about him? Salvatore asked, nodding toward Vincent. Maya took a shaky breath. I don't know. I've never done this before. I've watched it done, studied the procedures, but actually extracting a bullet. She looked at Vincent, pale and bleeding on the white sheets. I could hit an artery, 'cause more damage. He could die because I don't know what I'm doing. He'll die anyway if you don't try, Salvatore said bluntly. And for what it's worth, the boss doesn't trust easy. If he told you to help him, he believes you can. Marco returned with an armful of supplies, towels, a first aid kit that looked military grade, bottles of alcohol and peroxide, and surprisingly actual surgical instruments still in sterile packaging. Where did you get these? Maya asked, unwrapping a package of surgical scissors. Boss keeps safe houses stocked, Marco explained. He's been shot before. Learn to be prepared. The casual way he said it, been shot before, sent a chill through Maya. This was Vincent's normal. Violence, injury, makeshift surgery in anonymous apartments. This was the life Mrs. Chen had tried to save him from. The life he'd chosen anyway because a 10-year-old boy had run out of options and never found his way back. Maya scrubbed her hands with alcohol until they burned, pulled on latex gloves from the kit, and arranged her instruments on a clean towel like she'd seen surgeons do. Her hands were steadier now, her mind clicking into the clinical detachment they'd taught her in school. This wasn't Vincent Caruso, mob boss and dangerous man. This was a patient with a GSW who needed immediate intervention. She could do this. She had to do this. Hold him down, she told Marco and Salvatore. This is going to hurt and he might fight even unconscious. They positioned themselves on either side of the bed. Maya took a final steadying breath, picked up the forceps, and began. The bullet was lodged deeper than Maya had hoped, pressed against what felt like the lower rib. She worked slowly, carefully, sweat dripping into her eyes despite the apartment's chill. Her entire world narrowed to the wound, the forceps, the painstaking millimeter by millimeter exploration of torn tissue. Vincent's eyes fluttered open halfway through, unfocused with pain. He made a sound, not quite a scream, more a strangled gasp, and tried to pull away. Hold him, Maya ordered, not looking up. Marco and Salvatore pressed down on Vincent's shoulders. He thrashed weakly, caught between consciousness and shock, his body trying to escape what his mind couldn't process. Almost there, Maya murmured, talking to herself as much as to him. Just a little more. The forceps closed around something hard. Metal. The bullet. Slowly, carefully, afraid of losing her grip, Maya withdrew the forceps. The bullet came free with a wet sound that made her stomach turn. It clattered into a metal bowl Marco had provided, a sound that seemed impossibly loud in the tense silence. Got it, she breathed. Vincent had passed out again, which was probably a mercy. Maya packed the wound with gauze soaked in antibiotic ointment, then began the delicate process of suturing. Her stitches weren't pretty. The attending physician at her hospital rotation would have critiqued her technique harshly, but they were functional, pulling the torn tissue together, giving Vincent's body a chance to heal. By the time she finished bandaging the wound, her hands were cramping and her scrubs, borrowed from someone's closet, were covered in blood. She stripped off the gloves, washed her hands again, and allowed herself one moment of shaking relief before forcing herself back into nurse mode. He needs IV fluids, she said, and antibiotics, Real ones, not just ointment. There's an IV set up in the kit, Marco said, already moving to get it. And pills. Amoxicillin, I think. Of course there was. Vincent Caruso's safe houses were better equipped than some emergency rooms Maya had trained in. She started the IV, adjusted the drip rate, crushed antibiotic pills and mixed them with water to get them into Vincent's system faster. Then she checked his vitals. Pulse still too fast but steady. Breathing shallow but regular. Blood pressure low but not dangerously so. He'd lost a lot of blood, but he'd live. Probably. If infection didn't set in. If she hadn't missed any internal damage. If. Maya sank into a chair someone had pulled next to the bed, suddenly exhausted beyond anything she'd ever felt. The adrenaline that had carried her through the surgery was draining away, leaving her hollow and shaking. "You did good," Salvatore said quietly from the doorway. "Real good." "I don't know if I did," Maya said honestly. "Check on him every hour. Temperature, pulse, breathing. If anything changes, if he gets worse, you call 911, understand? I don't care what his rules are. You call." "Understood," Marco said. He studied her for a long moment. "You could leave. We can take it from here. Get you a car, driver, take you wherever you want to go." Maya looked at Vincent, pale and vulnerable in the bed, so different from the commanding figure who'd walked into the diner. She thought about leaving, about walking away from this insanity and back to her normal life. She had an exam in. She checked the clock. 6 hours. She should be studying, sleeping, preparing. Instead, she was covered in blood in a mob safe house. Having just performed surgery she wasn't qualified to perform on a man she'd met only hours ago. "I'll stay," she heard herself say, "until he wakes up, to make sure he's stable." Marco nodded as if he'd expected nothing less. "I'll make coffee." The hours crawled past with agonizing slowness. Maya dozed in the chair, jerking awake every time Vincent's breathing changed or he moved. Marco and Salvatore took turns on watch, one always awake, always armed, always listening for sounds of pursuit or discovery. Around 4 a.m, Maya woke to find Vincent watching her, his eyes clearer than they'd been. "You stayed," he said, his voice rough. "Someone had to make sure you didn't die," Maya said, moving to check his pulse. "Stronger now. Steadier. How do you feel?" "Like I've been shot," Vincent said, managing the ghost of a smile. "Which, technically, I have been." "You saved my life," Maya said quietly. "In the car. You covered me. Took that bullet for me. Seemed like the thing to do," Vincent said. Then more seriously, "I brought you into this. The attack, the danger, that's on me. Protecting you was the least I could do." "Who were they?" Maya asked. "The men who attacked us. Competition," Vincent said simply. "Petrov's crew, probably. They've been pushing into territory I control. Tonight was their answer to my last warning." He shifted slightly, wincing at the pain. "They'll be back. They always come back until someone ends up dead or in prison." "Is that what your life is?" Maya asked. "Just constant warfare? Never-ending violence?" "Yes," Vincent said without hesitation. "And I'm tired of it." The admission hung in the air between them. Maya sat back down, studying his face in the dim light filtering through the blinds. "Mrs. Chen told me about your brother," she said gently. "About Marco." Vincent's jaw tightened. "She had no right. She wanted me to understand." Maya interrupted. "And I think I do. You were a child who made impossible choices because no one protected you. You became what you had to become to survive. But Vincent," she leaned forward, making sure he was looking at her, "you're not that child anymore. You have power now, resources, options. You can choose differently." "Can I?" Vincent asked, and she heard the genuine uncertainty in his voice. "I've been this person for so long. I don't know who I'd be without it." "You'd be the man who helped Sarah and her baby tonight," Maya said. "The man who brings soup to Mrs. Chen even when she yells at you. The man who took a bullet for a waitress he barely knows." "That's not enough to erase everything else," Vincent said. "No," Maya agreed. "But it's a start." They sat in silence for a while, the apartment quiet except for the distant sounds of the city waking up. Delivery trucks rumbling past, early risers heading to work. The eternal rhythm of Brooklyn life. "Tell me about nursing school," Vincent said suddenly. "Why did you choose it?" Maya blinked at the subject change but went with it. "My grandmother. She got sick toward the end, and the nurses at hospice. They were amazing. Patient, kind, professional. They made her last month's bearable. I wanted to be that for someone else. So you work yourself to exhaustion, study until you can barely see straight, all to help strangers, Vincent summarized. Why? Because someone helped me once, Maya said simply. My abuela, when my mother died. She didn't have to take me in. She was older, on a fixed income, could barely support herself. But she did it anyway because it was the right thing to do. I guess I'm trying to pay that forward. The right thing, Vincent repeated, as if the phrase was foreign. I've made a career out of doing the wrong thing for what felt like the right reasons. At what point does the math stop adding up? I don't know, Maya admitted. But I think it's never too late to start trying. Mrs. Chen is still alive. She still loves you, even if she can't accept what you've become. That's something worth fighting for. Vincent's eyes grew heavy, the pain medication and exhaustion pulling him back toward sleep. Stay, he murmured, until morning. Please. I will, Maya promised. Within minutes he was asleep again, his breathing deep and even. Maya checked his vitals one more time. Temperature slightly elevated, but not dangerously so. Pulse strong, wound clean with no signs of fresh bleeding. She'd done it. Against all odds, with nothing but student knowledge and sheer determination, she'd saved his life. Maya settled back in her chair, pulling a blanket Marco had brought around her shoulders, and watched the dawn light begin to filter through the windows. In a few hours, she'd miss her exam, probably fail the class, maybe even fail out of nursing school if the absence wasn't excused. But she'd saved a life tonight. Wasn't that what being a nurse was really about? As the sun rose over Brooklyn, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Maya Santos made a decision. Whatever came next, consequences, danger, complications, she wouldn't regret staying. Wouldn't regret choosing compassion over convenience. Some choices, she was learning, defined who you were in ways that transcended any simple calculation of cost and benefit. Vincent Caruso had learned that lesson when he was 10 years old. Maybe it was time he learned that the same truth could save him too. Vincent woke to sunlight and the smell of coffee. For a disoriented moment he couldn't place where he was. The room was unfamiliar. His side hurt like fire, and there was a woman asleep in a chair beside his bed. Then memory returned in a rush. The attack, the bullet, Maya's hands, steady and sure, saving his life in a makeshift operating room. He studied her in the morning light, exhausted, still wearing blood-stained scrubs, her dark hair falling across her face. She'd stayed all night, watched over him like he mattered, like he was worth saving. When was the last time someone had done that? Marco appeared in the doorway, coffee cup in hand, pausing when he saw Vincent was awake. Boss, he said quietly, careful not to wake Maya. How you feeling? Alive, Vincent said. Thanks to her? Marco nodded. She's something else. Never seen anyone that calm under pressure. You picked good. I didn't pick her, Vincent said. She picked herself. Stayed for a crying baby. Stayed for Mrs. Chen. Stayed for me even when she had every reason to run. What now? Marco asked. Petrov's going to hear you survived. He'll try again. I know, Vincent said. But first, I need to make sure she gets home safe. Then we deal with Petrov. Maya stirred, her eyes opening slowly. She blinked, taking in the morning light, Vincent awake and watching her. You're okay, she said, relief evident in her voice. Thanks to you, Vincent replied. I owe you my life. You already paid that debt, Maya said. In the car, remember? Then we're even, Vincent said. Which means you're free to go. Marco will take you wherever you need to go, home, school, anywhere. Maya checked her phone, wincing at the time. I've already missed my exam and my shift at the diner starts in 4 hours. I'll handle Rosie, Vincent said. And your school? What exam was it? Pathophysiology. But it's okay, I'll handle that too, Vincent interrupted. You saved my life, Maya. The least I can do is make sure it doesn't cost you yours. Maya wanted to argue, but exhaustion won out. Okay, she said quietly. Thank you. Vincent reached for his phone, made 3 calls. Brief, authoritative, the kind of calls that made things happen. When he finished, he looked back at Maya. Your professor will call you this afternoon to reschedule. Rosie knows you're safe and not to expect you today. And there's an envelope on the kitchen table, payment for services rendered. I don't want money, Maya said immediately. It's not payment, Vincent clarified. It's tuition, for next semester. Consider it an investment in a nurse who saved my life. Maya's throat tightened. Vincent, I can't. Yes, you can, he said firmly. And you will. Because you've earned it. And because I need someone in this city who'll remember that I'm capable of doing at least one good thing. Their eyes met, and something passed between them. Understanding, respect, maybe the beginning of something neither could name. I should go, Maya said finally. You need rest. And I need a shower and about 12 hours of sleep. Marco will drive you, Vincent said. And Maya, thank you. For everything. Maya stood, gathered her things, but paused at the door. Mrs. Chen was right, she said. About you. There's still good in you, Vincent. Don't let it die just because the world expects a monster. Then she was gone, leaving Vincent alone with his thoughts, his pain, and the possibility that maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late to become someone his mother would have been proud of. The safe house was surprisingly ordinary. A modest apartment above a Chinese restaurant in Sunset Park. Vincent's men carried him up narrow stairs while Maya pressed a jacket against his bleeding wound, her mind racing through trauma protocols she'd studied but never performed. They laid him on a bed with white sheets. Maya examined the wound. Entry point below the ribs, no exit. The bullet was still inside. I need supplies, she told Marco, Vincent's guard. Clean towels, alcohol, surgical instruments if you have them, antibiotics, sutures. Marco returned with a military-grade first aid kit. Boss keeps safe houses prepared, he explained. Maya scrubbed her hands until they burned, pulled on gloves, and began. The world narrowed to the wound, the forceps, the careful exploration of torn tissue. Vincent's eyes opened halfway through, unfocused with pain. He tried to pull away. Hold him, Maya ordered. Her hands shook but didn't stop. The forceps closed around metal. Slowly, carefully, she withdrew the bullet. It clattered into a metal bowl. Got it, she breathed. She sutured the wound with stitches that weren't pretty but functional, then started an IV and administered antibiotics. Vincent's pulse steadied. His breathing evened out. He would live. Maya collapsed into a chair beside the bed. Exhausted beyond anything she'd ever felt. She'd done it. Against all odds. She'd saved his life. Hours passed. Maya dozed and woke, checking Vincent's vitals obsessively. Around 4 in the morning, she found him watching her. You stayed, he said, voice rough. Someone had to make sure you didn't die, Maya replied, checking his pulse. Stronger now. You saved my life, Vincent said quietly. In the car, you covered me, took that bullet for me. Seemed like the thing to do, he said. Then, seriously, I brought you into this. Protecting you was the least I could do. They sat in silence. Maya studied his face in the dim light. Mrs. Chen told me about your brother, she said gently. About Marco. You were a child who made impossible choices. But Vincent, you're not that child anymore. You have power now. You can choose differently. Can I? Vincent asked. I've been this person for so long. You'd be the man who helped Sarah's baby tonight, Maya said. The man who brings soup to Mrs. Chen. The man who took a bullet for a waitress he barely knows. That's not enough to erase everything else, but it's a start. Vincent's eyes grew heavy. Stay, he murmured. Until morning. I will, Maya promised. Dawn light filtered through the windows. Vincent woke to find Maya still there, asleep in the chair beside his bed. When she stirred, he made 3 phone calls. Your professor will reschedule your exam, he told her. Rosie knows you're safe, and there's an envelope in the kitchen. Tuition for next semester. Vincent, I can't. You can, he said firmly, because you've earned it, and because I need someone in this city who'll remember I'm capable of doing at least one good thing. Maya stood to leave but paused at the door. Mrs. Chen was right about you. There's still good in you, Vincent. Don't let it die just because the world expects a monster. Then she was gone, leaving Vincent alone with the possibility that maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late to become someone his mother would have been proud of.